Well, good evening, everybody. I'm also checking the YouTube too. I have it open on my end. Looking
Just to be
good.
sure that it's working.
Hello. Yes, yes, just checking. It's always good to be good because I am tonight's host. Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I've been MC for the night, but I'm excited to be here. Beth is a little bit busy for the night, so we're here. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to be your host, and we are going to be jumping right into things. Hello, Scott. Lane, good to see you as always. Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Oh, yes. Moving forward. Okay, let's jump into things. Table of contents. Today is January 20, 2023. Our first meeting for the year. Very exciting announcements and things to talk about tonight. So we're going to basically walk through our intro, which is going to be just about this slide, about 15 minutes. Then we'll jump into community plugs. Then we'll have Mac, who is going to be presenting from Midwest to Far East, one of our presentation. Excited to hear more about that from Mac. And then, of course, after the presentation, we'll have a little post meeting. You're welcome to anyone is welcome to join us in the lounge in the Discord, which would be like the Minneapolis St. Paul room. Come say hi. So fantastic! Just so everyone knows, I know everyone. I see a lot of regulars here. we have Zach Squid. Good to see you too. Everyone is welcome to our meeting. It's safe, inclusive community for people who make and want to make games, as well as people who are just interested and want to play them. Of course, you don't have to be a member to join our meetings, but if you are a member of the IGDA, you could always let them know that you are part of the Twin Cities chapter, so we get a little bit of kickback. That's always nice for our part. So we'll be, let's see, Twin Cities Discord right there, discord.igdatwincities.org. Fantastic. All right. So just so everyone knows again, we're all volunteers. We are a community-run organization led by these wonderful people. And so if you're interested in running our events or programs, come reach out to our Discord. Send us an email at igd@twincities@gmail.com. We're always looking for more help, especially because we're also looking for wonderful volunteers. We could not run we have a weekly meeting every week. Well, now we're coming up on potentially a board game meeting, thanks to maybe potentially Trevor. We'll talk about that as that makes more progress. But oh my gosh, we would not be able to host all of our events without the help of our wonderful volunteers. So if you are interested in running an event or interested in helping us either go to conventions, I'm just saying, if you want to help us table at a convention, come talk to me. I'm always looking for helpers. So yes, also looking for somebody to be a dedicated social media person. So if you are a student at a college or looking for some sort of internship along those lines, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you. Also, if you are just an expert and have some free time, also would love your expertise, but less likely on that part. Cool. Also, yes, mentioning, I did mention that anyone is welcome to our meetings, but if you do want to become a member, you can go to igda.org/membership, and you get a lot of unique resources. Like they have, you can actually get medical insurance, dental insurances. You still have to pay the premium of them, of course, but if you're a member, they've already negotiated some rates and things like that. So it's always a nice little benefit. Also, you get a lot of nice discounts from I think don't quote me, but like Unity and potentially maybe Adobe discounts for just basically software discounts. So it does come with some perks. In addition to even things like GDC discounts, which is still a very expensive thing regardless. But oh my gosh. But if you do become a member, feel free to reach out and then let them know that you are the Twin Cities chapter, so we can get a little bit stipend, so that we can spend some money to support the community, which we'll talk about coming up here with some of our regular schedule events. Today is, of course, the second Wednesday of the month, which is where we have our game dev meeting here. The next following Wednesday, is going to be prototypes, which is our Twin Cities playtest. So if you've got a game that is in the making at any stage, even early alpha, beta, or even before release, or even actively release, and you're just looking for some feedback, definitely reach out to Lane Davis, Dale, or sorry, not Dale, Mark is also in the Discord. Reach out to these guys. They're wonderful people who can help you get your game on stream and get testers for you. The fourth Wednesday, meaning afterward, it's going to be Minnesota VR HCI. So we have the wonderful Zach and David who are going to be have hosted some incredible VR experiences where you can hop in and meet and socialize with people through the VR space. It's pretty sick. I have watched a lot of those videos and I was like, oh, I wish I had VR to participate, but I know that they've also hosted it on a certain space, which is I'm forgetting the name of, but you don't have to have VR to join this particular space. If somebody knows that, If somebody knows what the name of that space is.
Yeah, REM 5 is the space that they hold hybrid events. So you can watch online, or you can head down to REM 5 in the suburbs. And it's a
Perfect.
really cool space, and they've been a really good partner for the VR meetings.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's right there. Oh, it's right there in the postings. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. But of course, you are all probably watching here on YouTube, which are all of our videos are recorded so that people can come back and watch it, take a look at these basic catalog of our events. So, all right. We also have some special interest groups which will be participating. The second Friday that's coming up here, it will be the IGDA Twin Cities Women and Games Gathering, where everyone else, of course, is welcome. But we are wanting specifically to invite everyone to come play games, talk about either things project you're developing, or even just connect and network with each other. This will be hosted by Beth. And the last time, one of the meetings that I got to participate in and watch was they got to play some Jackbox, and it was just great hearing just like what everyone was thinking on their side. And I don't know. I had a good time just watching the stream. So if you're interested, of course, please come join the fun. The next sorry, for Saturday will be the IGDA Twin Cities People of Color Get Together, and this again, networking social event hosted by Stephen McGregor. So we generally play things on Discord or even just talk about projects we're working on. Last time last time I participated, we got to see one of our previous board members, Dark Chocolate, who was showcasing like a music video, and it was phenomenal to see the things that he's been working on. And then I had to go, unfortunately, but then they had something else that they were working on that they didn't want to show to the public yet. So Steven got to see like a sneak peek preview of something very, very secretive, and I was like very jealous. But you could be somebody that sees some of these behind the scenes events that or behind the scenes projects that we're working on. If you attend those events. Okay, yes, and then of course those events are not streamed to YouTube. They're mostly just like a nice social gathering. There we go. Okay, next topic is going to be the Discord's game channel. Okay, so this is a cool thing that Mark has been working on, in which if you have a game that's local, or just in general, actually, is it true? Just local? Does it have to be local? Does it have to be
I think we want someone from the community, and that means the wider region that we serve. So if you identify as someone who's served by our community and have a game, we would love to put a channel for you on the Discord. And this just saves you the trouble of setting up a blog or getting your own Discord server started when you just are getting going. And then once you've got an idea of what you want to use it for, if you want to do dev updates or you want to get feedback or you just want to post thoughts about your game for people to see. However you want to use it is up to you. And then if you want to migrate that to a community of your own once it's big enough, that's also feel free to do. It's just a little starter project for you, and we'll take anything. So you got a project in the works, something that's out that you want to foster a community with, or just you want to have someone to write down your thoughts. Let us know. And there's a process in the request the channel, which will explain how you get it. It's really simple, easy, and there's no obligation. Use it as much as you want. It's there for you if you want it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, next we're going to be jumping into some news, plugins, and announcements, with the first plugin being our lead playtester helper here, Lane Davis, talking about Final Strike. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, IGDA, for hosting this event. Great to be back with you all. And the reason why I come to this community with a special request is due to the sheer unbelievable concentration of very talented folks in this audience. So I want to set the stage here. So it's January. Believe it or not, we are sandwiched between two pillars of winter. There's December 21st on one side, the darkest day. There's January 21st on the other side, the coldest day. And in this dark heart of winter, Peter Yang and I have been out in the ice mines, quarrying precious glaciite, taking the rarest materials to craft the finest game for you all. And folks, we are just about ready. We are just a few short months from launching our GameFound crowdfunding campaign. So that is coming up in just a couple of months here. So there's one thing right now that we lack, which is fresh eyes. We have been blessed with a handful of really phenomenal playtesters, but at this point, they're really bad at one thing, and that is the new player perspective. As we go through the last days before our campaign starts, I'd like to invite you to join us, meet our amazing community, and give your perspective on the project that we've been working on for the last year. You can find us in the Final Strike channel in the IGDA Twin Cities Discord, or by following the link that I am putting in chat right now. Thank you, and look forward to Nick's plug, because I think this one is really special. Talk to you all later.
Thank you so much, my friend. We're going to go ahead to the next slide, which will be the official announcement of our Global Game Jam site here, 2023. So the Jam site registration is now open. You can go ahead. Mike taught us about this earlier, that we can actually make an Eventbrite with like our unique URL. So you can just go to ggj2023eventbrite.com. Bam.
That's right. We claimed it. Anybody else who wants to do Global Game Jam in 2023 has to work their way through us before they go to their local site. But that's where you go to find the registration for our Global Game Jam site. Now, for the past couple of years, we've been doing it online only, like most folks. And last year we wanted to go back in person, but winter is messy with COVID, and I think this year we have a plan that I think is immune-ish to those kinds of ups and downs. And so what we're going to do a hybrid event. So we're going to do in person right here at Noble Robot, which is, you can only see a tiny portion of in my window, but it's in the St. Anthony, Maine neighborhood of Minneapolis. And we're going to do an in-person event there, limited to 30 people because it's not the biggest space in the world. But then, of course, we'll also be going online as well. The details about that is going to come right after I talk about the in-person stuff. Because we're going to have different teams running both things and facilitating hybrid teams and presentations. So Peter, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see the first thing is going to be the schedule. And we're going to start on Friday. And for people who've done Global Game Jam before, this is old hat. The difference here is that we're not going to be keeping the space open for 24 hours. Although things might get a little flexible depending on interest. So let me know if a 24-hour space is really important to you. But the current plan is to close at 3 a.m., which is a pretty good window, and then open again at 9 a.m. the next day on Saturday and Sunday. But otherwise, the schedule is pretty standard. We do an opening presentation. We reveal the theme. We do a whole team formation exercise. So this is something that's, I think, really important to Global Game Jam is you do not have to come with a team. In fact, you're kind of encouraged not to. And find people you've not worked with before, find people you haven't met before to work with on a project. And that is so much easier to do in person. But of course, we want to facilitate that process online as well. So whether you're doing it in person or online, don't worry about having a team. Don't worry about knowing what you're going to do. Don't worry about having any skills. It's all for you to discover during the weekend. And we're looking forward for new jammers as well as experienced jammers to have that. A couple other things on the schedule here, but when we recommend you have things all set up, but you'll learn all about that during the weekend. The really important thing on this page is the next section, which is the COVID policy. So one of the things that's really tough about, especially when you have a lot of people in a confined space for a long time, is we're still in a pandemic, unfortunately. And so the way we're going to handle it this year for the in-person site is we're going to have everybody is going to need to do a negative COVID test on Friday. And that is, not outside. That's, I think, a reasonable request, but it might, you might have to dig one out if you haven't taken the test in a while, or go get one at your local Walgreens. If you forget to do this, we can't let you into the space. But there is there's a pharmacy right next door to the space that you can just grab a test. So it should be fine, but you should be really aware of this policy because we are going to take it really seriously because we're not going to require masking during the event. And in order to not require that, I feel that we need to make sure that we have a pretty good policy for admittance. And so there's no exception to this policy. It's pretty hard and fast, but it should be very easy to comply with. So let me know if you have any questions about that or concerns, or wonder if if you don't think it's going to be safe enough, or you have some clarification questions. I'm here for that. A little information about the location, but you can read that at your own time. There's a bunch of free parking nearby, which is really rare for near downtown Minneapolis, so that should be able to accommodate everybody. And it's the best neighborhood in the city for food and for provisions. There's a grocery store next door. It's great. We're going to have a blast. It's going to be a little crowded if we fill up with all 30 people, but it's going to be a blast. So all that information is on the Eventbrite listing. And Peter, if you want to go ahead and mime reserving a spot, you can see there's two options. when you select a ticket. You have the in-person, and that's limited to 30, and looks like we've got a couple takers already. And of course, practically unlimited online as well. So that's pretty much the in-person details, but we're going to be having the online portion run by one of our board members and one of our now longtime partners, and I will let them take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So last year we partnered up with Nick from Amber Waves of I can't do it. Amber Waves of Games.
I still struggle with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we're gonna tackle it mostly the same way we did last year, right, Nick?
Yeah. It's a little more informal, I think, than the in-person events. So you don't necessarily have to join, through the Eventbrite to be a part of the Discord event. The same goes for the formalities of the global game jam specific rules. You are kind of expected to submit PC games, but I try to keep things as inclusive as possible on the Amber Waves Discord server for our events. So regardless of the kind of submission that you want to submit, I mean, if you can get it to run in Mario Maker, WarioWare DIY, Tabletop Simulator, if you can make a game out of it, then you can, kind of submit it to this event as well. So it's a little more inclusive. So that's a good option. I also encourage people who are joining the live events to just come hang out on the server and see what we're making and post what you're making as well, because this is specifically for people who can't get out and find community events as well. So it's good to see what the community just outside of our reach is making. Excuse me. But yeah, I think that by this weekend the registration will be up for that. We'll have to post a link that's available for everybody to actually be able to join and register server side. I think that's all the information that I've got at this point.
Sounds good to me. I would say, yeah, it's a very, very chill experience. Even just doing a remote team, it's very fun just to be like, hey, you can hop in the Discord, take a look at what people are working on, come say hi. We previously had a bunch of rooms that we created, so a team could have like their own little chat room so they could organize through that Discord. And of course, people can just hop in and see what they're up to. And it's just kind of cool to see everyone making games and like how the discussions are going and so on and so forth. You don't have to stay in our Discord afterwards. After you make your team, you can go create your own Discord server and whatnot. But we like to have you stay so you can like just let everyone see what you're working on, and afterwards you can go like backlog it at that point. But yeah, exciting. We have official dates. So
that's a good point you made, Peter, just about the being able to check in on what other people are doing, because that's a big feature of an in-person event. And Nick alluded to hybrid teams. We have a video conferencing suite here at Noble Robot, so if you need to have a meeting where 2 of you are here and 4 of you are online, we can accommodate that. I think we definitely we're going to figure it out as we go, I think, but we really want to encourage the full hybrid part of the hybrid event, and that means we're going to try to do as much of the stuff together as a group. If you're here on site, we want you to use the Discord to communicate, and so you can sort of share that space with everybody else. I do have a question though for David and Nick. Do we know which Discord we're going to be running it on? And if you don't know yet, what's the discussion about that? Because I know final details will come later, but what's the current thinking?
Well, we haven't talked about it yet, but I was thinking that we would do things through the Amber Waves Discord if Nick is good with that.
Yeah, that's actually I've got the server. It's a mess at the moment. I've kind of fallen behind, but it is set up to be sort of a digital venue for these kind of events. Outside of Global Game Jam, I do host these events quarterly. So whichever event kind of falls nearest to each quarter. I believe the next one is Ludum Dare or Game Jam Plus. I don't remember, but so the server is set up for that. I just need to clean it up, but I'll have that done by this weekend so that we can actually have people start filtering in and making sure that they're set up, registered. Maybe start talking amongst themselves to find teams, things like that.
Great. Yeah, and that proved pretty successful. I know the first time we did it was 2021, I think, right? And it's a good model. It's a good, like you say, you sort of set up a venue online, which is great. And when we start the event and reveal the theme, all those details will be available to you. So if you're like, how does this work? Where do I go? There's going to be people there to help you. So you can just come in completely ignorant of how it works or what's going on, and we'll get you sorted.
Actually, and on the Amber Wave server, I do encourage people who aren't comfortable or confident in taking on an entire jam project by themselves there's a specific role you can assign yourself as a flex role, so you can let people know that I'm here to help. I'd like to work on something with the team. Maybe just don't rely on me for like the essential functions of the game, but if you need some extra art or music or need levels thrown together, it's a good way to ease yourself into the jam process if you're new to it, if it's a little intimidating.
This is true. I would say my first game jam in general, I was just like project management, like behind the scenes production, and because I don't code, I don't do art at all. So my first game jam, I just showed up, got a big team together, and just worked on coordinating. I brought like a bunch of board game pieces so we can like prototype the game in physical form before even like going to coding. And that was a little fun. So that's all entirely a potential thing you could do. So yeah, I agree.
The only Game Jam game I'd ever seen with a producer.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Okay. But yes, I think that's it for the last slide here. If there's anything else, feel free to reach out to us. You got game releases, game developments, meetings or events. We want the community to know. You could either you can't post links in the YouTube, but you can post links in the Discord. So come join our Discord, and you can come and find out what the community is up to. And of course, if you want to plug something next month, tickets will go for sale for the end of right for $0 that you can just buy it so that you can plug your thing. Mac, would you do us the honors?
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Perfect. Okay. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. And
looking good.
I just want to say, hey, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to kind of tell my story. And I'll start off with just a quick summary of who I am, and then I'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. So my name is Mac, and originally I'm from Newark, New Jersey, but I moved to Minnesota when I was around 6 years old, and I've been here since until 2017 when I decided to take the plunge and go to Japan. And so I've been in Japan for the past 6 years, and working with different game industries, as well as starting my own company, Borderless Translations. But once COVID hit, right, I was kind of stuck there. So Japan said, hey, if you leave, you can leave, but you can't come back. So I've been stuck in Japan since COVID happened. And so now that the borders are open, I came back in July of this year just to, reconnect with family, friends, and, work on the U.S. side of the business as well. And so it's been great. and I'm looking forward to kind of tell you my story about, how do you, break into the game industry, let alone the game industry in Japan. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the resources here in Minnesota as well as in Japan. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so I'm going to get started. So throughout this talk, the main things will be about, no set path, then look for available resources. Being in Minnesota, right, it's when you want to work in a really big, when you want to break into the game industry, there's not a lot of resources here, at least to my knowledge, right? Most people will have to go to California, Boston, New York, where one of the bigger studios are in order to really get into that field. Now, if there's no available resources, right, then you build your own, right? And so I think that is a very important theme where, people want to be in games. People want to do what you want to do, but there's not a space for them to do it in. So it's important that, if it's not available, it's okay to build it. Touch base and stay connected. This one is key, especially to my journey. It is so the people you meet will be your lifelong friends, will be your greatest mentors and advocates. And just all you have to do is say hello every once in a while. Link back to the past. Own your skill tree. To me, your skill tree is, the points you've invested in your skill tree is so important. And, over time, we tend to forget the older skills, but you should always refresh it, bring it back, and you'll be surprised at how effective it is in your new career or even your new environment. And then last but not least, remember your origin. So for those who like My Hero Academia, All Might always says, hey, remember your origin. And this is so true. When you are on your journey, you forget. You forget why you started, you forget that initial spark, and it can get hard. It can get hard, it can get tough, and you don't know why you're continuing. And this can be even, truer when you're in a foreign country and you don't even speak the language. And so I always say, hey, remember that initial spark that got you going in order for you to complete the task that was given. So now, for me, my journey started, of course, with high school, middle school. So with middle school, I'll touch on this very briefly. So with middle school, I went to Fair School in Robbinsdale, and that is a fine arts school. So I did all the basic, art. I did dance, modern dance. I did theater, and so that's kind of what got me into a lot of the digital arts, fine arts. Then I went to Brooklyn Center High School, and at Brooklyn Center High School, that's when I got really into business, and I wanted to own my own business and also make games. So now, fast forward to UMD. So at UMD, I really wanted to get into games, but there was no set game design degree. And of course, I was like, no problem. And so when it comes to, no set path, just look for the available resources. If you are in Minnesota and you're at UMD, please talk to these people. So there won't be a dedicated a dedicated degree, but there will be individual classes that could, ignite that initial spark or get you connected. So Steve Holtz, he taught me how to use Blender, 3D modeling, animation. Professor Downs, Professor Downs, he's a great dude. I would have never gotten into video games unless he really started talking to me. And so we talked about the history of games, psychology, how do games affect people. You know, that's how he was the first person I learned who like Jerry Lawson was. And I was like, wow, I'm just so used to playing games, and he has a new perspective. So now you have Lisa Fitzpatrick. So one of the things I did at UMD was I was an intern at the multimedia lab, and at the multimedia lab, the what they did was all the different disciplines, whether it was math, science, they needed to do research papers or grants based on digital technology. And so what I would do is that I would help them write those grants, do those proposals, and I got to work with a lot of different, digital projects. For example, there was one guy who was working on VR, and he jailbreaked a Wii remote, and I got to test a virtual environment being in a grocery store. And so for me, that was, I got to be in VR before VR was, mainstream. Now, I think if I hide, okay. And the last thing was, interactive media class. So in that class, I was able to create an AR click and point game, and it was about Duluth. And so what we did is that we took pictures of, downtown Duluth and overlaid it with an AR image. And then finally, when there is not a available resource, you should build your own. So now I'm getting all these different one-off classes about games, but I'm like, hey, I want to meet people. I feel like other people would benefit from this. And so my teacher, she said, hey, start a group, start a club. So I ended up starting the Media Arts Club. And this is something that I was really passionate about because I just wanted it to be a hub for like-minded individuals to come together and make games. And so that was kind of my time at UMD. So now, like I said before, you're trying to build out your skill tree, and even though the area you're in has some resources, but is it really the main skill tree that you want to go into? But thanks to my research, I found out that I don't have to go to California, Boston, or any of the bigger places. There's actually local publishing sites for the big names. So like Activision, Sony, Nintendo has publishing branches here in Minnesota, and I was able to work at Activision as a TRG tester. While also being a TRG tester, I was also able to kind of flex my business degree along with my passion for making games. So I entered into several entrepreneurship contests, such as Startup Week and MN Cup. Now my time at Activision. So I was having fun. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I was so happy. Like, when you finally get to be in the game industry, that first game industry job is just fantastic. And, I didn't even realize being a QA tester that you don't just play games. And so I learned about functional testing. I learned about TRG. So for those who don't know what TRG means, I think it just is technical requirements and guidelines. So third-party publishers, whenever they submit a game, they need to abide by certain guidelines based from like Sony, Nintendo, and otherwise the game cannot be published. So these are some of the games that I worked on. Wreck-It Ralph, NASCAR, 007. Ones I did not put on there was Bratz Fashion Boutique. I still have a little trauma for that, but I am, it's still a fond memory for me whenever I think back to it. So now I'm exiting out of UMD, and I'm hungry for games. I'm hungry for games. And one thing that I ended up realizing is that, being around games without making them. I think that was kind of the key point being in Minnesota was, I, I might not get a chance to develop games, but I can either test them, I can do other things around them, marketing. And so that's how I got introduced to Rob Weber. So for many of you who don't know who Rob Weber is, he's an entrepreneur who's based out in Sartell, Minnesota. And what Rob did was that he made a lot of different game-related businesses. So he had a studio called Recharge Studios. After Recharge Studios, he pivoted and created Native X, which is a mobile advertising company. Funny thing is that I've actually been following Rob since high school. So in high school, I went to a business camp, and Rob was a speaker at that camp, and he was presenting his business called Freeze.com, it was just like screensavers. And I really liked his story of perseverance, so I kept following him. And then after he changed from Freeze.com to Recharge Studios, I emailed him, I followed up with him, I stayed connected. And then as I was leaving UMD, I was like, hey, I need a job. So I was like, hey, I need a job. And I emailed him and I said, hey, I saw a position. It's no longer there. Is there a way you can make room for me? And he made room for me. And so he set up an apartment for me in Sartell, Minnesota. And I was able to move to Sartell and live there for about 3 months. And he taught me how to do market to games, A/B testing, sending different ads to different users to see which one is the most effective. And I even got a chance to make some of the ad designs. I think one thing that was really important to me was getting comfortable working with big publishers. So I think for me, we're very intimidated by brand names. And because of that, we might not be able to, how can I say it, negotiate to our full potential because we just want the job, right? And so it's important to be able to value yourself and set a level playing field. And the last thing was working with international teams and getting a chance to understand how they work. So I got to work with a lot of companies from Japan, China, the UK, and being around games without actually making them. So here are some of the games that I ended up working on. So My Singing Monsters, Subway Surfers. So maybe this is a while ago. So maybe some of you don't remember them, but My Singing Monsters very popular. I think Subway Surfers might still be popular, but thanks to this job, I really got into mobile gaming. Beforehand, I was very much a console person, spending 18 hours in my cave just playing Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest. But mobile, at the time, mobile games wasn't super interesting to me. I didn't really get it. I really enjoy games that end. So, but it was really nice to get involved with the mobile game field. So I got to do business meetings with Gree, Sega, and Konami. Now, this is the fun part. So I have been wanting to go to Japan for forever. And, my time at Native X, because they were doing business with Japanese companies, I took a leap. So I talked to Rob. I said, hey, Rob, if I pay for my living expenses, would you be willing to give me a part-time job and pay for my airfare to Japan? And, being the entrepreneur that he is, Rob said, yeah, let's go for it. And so Rob ended up paying for my airfare and gave me a part-time job. And I went to Japan in 2013 in the fall. And so while I was there, I enrolled in Japanese language school. And because I needed to do these business events in order to, drum up business for Native X. And so it was kind of like half the time I would just be networking. The other half I would just be, enjoying my dream of learning Japanese and hanging out with my friends. So when it came to intercultural communication, there was like no Americans. That I think that was the most surprising thing for me, is that basically KCP was an intensive language program, and it's Monday through Friday, 4 hours every day, all in Japanese. And usually the people in your class will be Korean, Chinese, or from the Philippines, and our common language was English. And so thanks to that really got me used to hearing different languages, understanding different gestures, because that would be vital later on in my career when working with different people from different cultures. Global networking, once again, just the people I met in class are still my friends now. They still hook me up with other translators. They still hook me up with other business deals. And so, it's very important to follow up. Now, one of the things is figuring out the requirements. And so what I mean by that is I knew I was on limited time. So my contract with Native X was only going to be 3 months in Japan. So I had to figure out what was necessary in order to stay in Japan. And if I couldn't stay in Japan, what could I do to come back? And so I did a lot of investigation, and that'll play off later in this presentation. But one thing I want to say is that, this image that you guys see here, if you guys like Kuroko's basket, that's his shirt, and this is me at the sports festival. I feel like a lot of people who watch anime, who read manga, understand how much I was enjoying living that weeboo life, so to speak. and it was just nice to be able to, be a part of a sports festival, having, living out, all the things I've seen in anime. Here it was kind of like not fair, because if you saw before at UMD, let's see, I was officially on the track team, so it was slightly unfair, but you got to do what you got to do. And the supportive teachers. So one thing that I have to say is that if you go to Japan, learn the language. And in the process of learning the language, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and you're going to need supportive teachers. And so my supportive teacher was Takahashi Sensei, and she was very she was strict. Like I wish I could say like she was like, sunshines and roses, but she was really strict, and she would get on me about my accent, my intonations, and I appreciated that. And the reason why I appreciated that was that she knew that I was, trying to find a business deal for Native X while I was there. And so as I was, traveling, finding, going to these business meetings, I ended up meeting someone from Konami. And he invited me to his house for a meeting. And I was like, what? And so me and my friend, we went to his house, and there was people just like kind of like chilling on the floor. Like this is, I don't know, this is it's very surreal. This will be a recurring theme. And so now we're at his house, and people are chilling on the floor, and we're just having the meeting like right in the middle of the living room, and it was very interesting. And so he's a cool dude. But one thing that I found out was that Japanese business dealings take a long time. So he explained to me that, if I was here for like 8 months or so, then he could like, start making some deals happen, but I was only there for 3 months. So that was one of the things I learned about Japanese businesses, that they take time. If this was America, I'm pretty sure, a month or two could probably settle something, but that's something that you guys should keep in mind if you're working with Japanese people, is that they prefer the slower route. And here are just some other pictures of just my life in Japan. I really like the fact that there was like a Mac house. I saw, these are my classmates. And then I also, for one of the business meetings, so if you're trying to drum up business in Japan and you are on a budget, or even anywhere, volunteer. So I ended up volunteering at TechCrunch Tokyo 2013, and after volunteering, they let me attend the networking event, and so I was able to make more connections that way. So now I'm back, and my contract with NativeX is over. So what am I doing in between? So when it comes to in between, right, you're still trying to aim for your goal. And it is so important to remember your origin, because you can get lost in the weeds, right? And so when I came back, I ended up finding a job as an IT consultant. I was a database developer for them, and then I slowly transitioned into technical project coordinator, and I worked for Turnberry Solutions for about 4 years. During that time, right, I still learned, or I was still studying Japanese. And so, for those who don't know, the JLPT, or the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, has 5 different levels. Level 5, N5 is the lowest, N1 is the highest. And so, if you want to work for a Japanese company, the base level is N2. You can if you are an engineer and you're looking to, if you have a very strong technical skill, people will usually let you in at N3, but N4 and N5 is just, they don't even look at it. Now, while I was in Minnesota, I made sure to continue to find a sensei. Michiko Sensei, she's a great person. She used to teach classes at Blaine Mall, and then she switched to Normandale in Bloomington. But based on my information, I don't think she's teaching anymore at Normandale, but if you guys are interested, I can see if I can find her contact information. And then the most important thing, yearly visits. As an IT consultant, you're making good money, and I was able to afford yearly visits to Japan to, keep that networking in place, keep reconnecting with old people, because I knew that once I moved to Japan, these guys would be my main support pillars. And so now I'm back. So I'm back at KCP because I just, really enjoyed my time there. Oh, well, don't mind this. Now, KCP, here, if you notice somebody, there's me. So I really enjoyed my time at KCP. They apparently really enjoyed my time at KCP too. And I was in a couple of advertisements for them. So if you go to their website, you'll be able to see me in a brochure. So now I'm back at KCP. It's 2017, and I'm connecting with old friends. The school is providing me with career support, training me on how to wear the right uniform, the right business procedure, and just really hammering in the career aspect of working in Japan. And one of the things I want to say is that it's very different from America. I think in America, you go to an interview, you probably have one interview, and then after you finish, and you'll wear a suit. After you finish that interview, they'll probably get back to you in a week, and then you come back and you don't have to wear a suit anymore. In Japan, it's very different. Usually, they will interview you 2 to 3 times, sometimes more. You're expected to always wear a suit, either navy blue or black. And it is, there's a lot of different procedures on just how to operate. So if you're trying to get into break into any kind of business in Japan, you need to know the etiquette. And so I was really appreciative of my sensei, Nikaido sensei. So Nikaido sensei, he spoke English sometimes, but I really appreciated that he understood what it meant to be a foreigner in a different land. And when you're trying to learn Japanese, there's like casual Japanese and there's business Japanese. And business Japanese is very different from casual. And I struggled a lot with it. But, Nikaido sensei was like, hey, just be yourself, right? He said, even you don't have to change your accent to be exactly Japanese, because you're not. It's like, hey, just use what's unique about you and keep going. And so that really helped me progress forward with my career search. So now I bet you're wondering, okay, in between. Now I'm in school. How am I earning money, right? How am I paying for my living expenses? How am I just surviving? And so, I'm using my entrepreneurship, and I'm using what sells best in Japan, and that's parties. So Japanese people love to party. They love events, and especially if they have an opportunity to learn Japanese, learn English, they are all for it. And so what I decided to do is that me and a friend decided to make Borderless Merrymakers. And what Borderless Merrymakers is that our belief was just having international people come together, and just having fun without any of the borders, just to be free to chit chat and talk. And so I did a lot of English parties at different venues. So I went to we did club parties, we did bar parties where you can see that we did like karaoke, we did just many different events, meeting different people, and it was great for networking, right? It was also great for my wallet, but but yeah. And so it was just good. It was just nice meeting many different people. And one of the things that really, set up my journey was that at one of these events, someone from Square Enix was at one of these events, and I got to know him. And through this journey, right, I kept inviting him to different events, kept, keeping him updated on my Japanese, keeping him updated on my journey to, just in case an opportunity arised. And so, Borderless Merrymakers, after a while, I actually ended up owning my own bar. I mean, I shouldn't say owning my own bar. So, in Japan, in Shinjuku, which is in the heart of Tokyo, there is a bar where you can rent it out for 6 hours, and then you are the host. So if you ever wanted to be a host your own club, right? That opportunity is there for you. And so what I would do is that I would just throw these parties at a bar, and I would invite people, and I would be a bartender, or I would hire my friends to be bartenders for me. So, putting together those, adding a new skill to the skill tree, and using that entrepreneurship to show everyone that I'm capable of doing business while in Japan. And the guy from Square Enix also came to my event, and he was so impressed with me that he offered me a job. And of course, I was still in school at the time, so it was only part-time. But someone had just went on maternity leave, and it was the perfect opportunity for me to break in. So now I've made it to the promised land. Your boy is at Square Enix, and so I am just very happy. Like, guys, I have Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger, I have Final Fantasy, I have Kingdom Hearts, and it was just fanboying for several months. I was so happy, guys. And so now I'm at Square Enix, and one of the things that I'm doing is I'm a community manager. And what that means is that I'm translating games from Japanese to English. And so my main job was the social media aspect of it. So when it came to social media campaigns, when it came to social media posts, when it came to interacting with consumers or the users of the game, I was the guy who would gather the insights, reporting, and making sure that things were communicated to the Japanese developer and vice versa. And so my main games, I'll show you in a minute, but my main games was Bravely Archive. So if you know Bravely Default, they made a game for the mobile for the Bravely Default series. And there I was able to utilize a lot of my skills from Native X, making advertisements, making different posters in order to drum up business for raid events, reward events, and special giveaways. And of course, while, like I said, Japanese people love to party and learn English. So my managers were like, "Hey, could you teach us some English?" I was like, "No problem. You're already paying for it, so it's good." Now, so here's some of the things that I'm doing at Square Enix, and these are the social media campaigns. And so what will happen is that they will create all of this will be in Japanese, and then I'll translate it, and then for this one, I designed the initial template, and then they filled it in with their own art. And then with this one, I just did straight translation. So I would just make sure that things would make sense, and there was no, how can I say it? That there was no misunderstandings when it came to what was being distributed, what were the requirements in order to get the reward. So yeah, that was my main role at Square Enix. So I'll go back. And so now, one of the things when it comes to games, unfortunately, is that unless your game does well, you can't continue with it. And unfortunately, Bravely Archive did not do well, and it was a limited release in New Zealand and I believe Thailand. And what happened was that in order for me to get a full-time job, the game needed to go global. And unfortunately, the game was not performing as well as the company had hoped for. And because of that, my contract ended. So now, my visa is ending in about 3 months. I am jobless, and I'm scrambling, right? I'm scrambling. I'm looking for a new job. I'm interviewing at Capcom. I'm interviewing at Bandai Namco. I'm interviewing at all these different places, but there's no openings for a community manager, and it was just really tough job searching, and as I said before, it takes time. Right? And so I'm going through these interviews, is doing 2 to 3 interviews per meeting just for them to tell me no. And it really got to me, and it was tough, and I was like, man, I don't want to go home like this, right? I don't want to go home feeling like a failure, feeling like I let people down. and I didn't want to let myself down. And so what happened was I got lucky. And so my friend's mom runs an English school, and she, was looking for an English manager to run her 2 schools. And so I said, hey, I've been teaching English, and I also know how to run a business. Will you give me a chance? And so she's like, sure. And so she sponsored my visa, and that's how I got to work at Fun English House. So for me, I was a manager at Fun English House, and and the nice thing about it is that I only really worked 25 to 30 hours a week. And so, I got to enjoy, I like kids. I like youth. I like teaching in general. And I got an opportunity to really understand how Japanese businesses work from the inside out. And, I'm really appreciative of this opportunity. So now, while I'm working here, while I'm learning the ins and outs of business, I need to, what's the next move? I want to get back into the games, but I want more independence, because I don't want to be dependent on, businesses sponsoring my visa. So the plan was start my own company. And so what I did was that, during my time, I would just basically start my business, and with the help of my Japanese friends, and also the ward office in Japan supported me on my endeavors of making my own business. And so that's how I created Borderless Translations. And so Borderless Translations, if you notice a recurring theme, borderless, I took the name from Borderless Merrymakers and carried it over to Borderless Translations. And so what we do at Borderless Translations is that we do film, games, and multilingual consulting. When it comes to being an entrepreneur, when you're starting your business, you kind of take whatever you can get. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's you want to build a niche, but at the same time, if you're too narrow, then you won't be able to get new business. And if you can't get new business, you can't support yourself. And so once again, I kind of got lucky where I saw a advertisement for someone to translate a TV pilot from Japanese to English. And so that was my very first project working, as Borderless Translations. And from there, that's when things really took off. And so I ended up also working on hand-drawn animation, which is a crowd-funded film about hand-drawn animation in the animators, because now it's kind of like a dying, art. And so that was really cool. And then things just kept picking up, and people would hear about my work. They would make referrals, and I would, keep making, these films and subtitles and closed captions. But once again, what about games? So now, Borderless Translations, we're getting a lot of, film, documentaries, TV show related work. But I'm like, I need to make games. And so what I did was that I took part in game jams. One of the things I really encourage people to do is take part in game jams. They are a great opportunity for you to make finished products, and to be able to add it to your portfolio, and to invest points into your skill tree that you otherwise would not have an opportunity to do so. And so I joined a video game collective called Melanated Game Kitchen, and they're a group of BIPOC creators out in Japan, California, Boston. They're all over. but they do a lot of different games based on the African diaspora. And so this is the latest game that I worked on. I was a narrative designer, and it was fun. So I did narrative design, and also I did marketing for the itch page. And then even if there are games that I don't directly work on, I also ended up doing like a game trailer. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing for the collective, I'm planning to use during my business as well, because I really want to work more with indie games. And speaking of indie games, thanks to all the work I've been doing with Melanated Game Kitchen, Square Enix, and I'm even making my own visual novel, I am now a part of a game called Law and Judgment, Shadow of the West. And so right now we are producing a prototype to release in February, and we're going to be pursuing funding for this game. And for those who don't know, Bass Reeves is a U.S. Marshal. And if you know, I mean, I may be dating myself with this, but if you know Texas Walker Ranger, the Lone Gunman, all those legends were based on Bass Reeves. And so what Bass Reeves is that he was the most accomplished U.S. Marshal in history, where he had over 3,000 arrests with only 14 deaths in the line of duty. And so I'm really excited about this game, and I'm also the narrative director for this game as well. But I'm also acting as the producers as well. So being able to work in between your main job, because I feel like many of us here probably are working at in an industry that's not directly related with games, but in between we're adding to that skill tree, right? That main tree, hoping that we'll get enough points or one of our results catches fire, and then we can be like, I can leave that other main thing and then come back. I won't leave Borderless Translations. I'm just gonna add it into the service offering. One thing I also want to mention is that I'm really big on community. I'm really big on mentorship, giving back, and one of the things I did was that called BC Initiatives. So BC Initiatives is a nonprofit, and what we do is that we work a lot with high school students. I should say, so secondary and elementary students, and our main goal or the main host is with Brooklyn Center High School. And recently I put together a video game production class for the students in order to give them an opportunity to learn about Unity. So I remote in a developer from California, and what we do is that we teach kids how to use Unity, how to go from idea to final product, and it's been great. The kids love it. They have an opportunity to flex their creative needs, and I actually got to introduce a student to a senior producer for Silver Rain Games, and to be able to make that connection, to be able to see, the student just lighting up with excitement about being able to talk to someone who can relate to her dreams to help her with that roadmap. It's incredible. And I wish, growing up, I also had that mentor, that person to help me with the roadmap. And I feel like a lot of us also feel the same way. And so definitely hit me up about this. So if you're interested in like STEAM and youth, please, I will get you involved. The school has funding for it, so I just wanted to plug that thing. And what is life in Tokyo? What is life in Tokyo? So guys, of course you gotta have fun while you're in Tokyo. I mean, I've talked about the ups and downs, the work. I mean, most of the time I was partying, right? And so what are some casual things you can do in Japan? One thing is that there's an ocean. There's an ocean in Japan, and I actually got to go surfing, and I had a lot of fun. And then where else? And then here's the cherry blossoms. And then I also, for the first time, went snowboarding in Japan. And, that's very different from, which is very ironic that I decided to go snowboarding for the first time in Japan instead of Minnesota. But those are just some of the things. It's just, everything's just so close in Tokyo that you can just take a train. It's a train away from a lot of these cool stuff. Now, food. Food is very important in Japan. So you have sushi, you have ramen. If you're missing a taste of home, in a place called Roppongi, there's a place called Soul Food House. And that Soul Food House is run by two Americans from Mississippi who has, the best soul food, ribs, burgers you can imagine. And here are just some links. I'll include more once people, you can ask me directly, but I'll be around in Discord. And that's it. That's my talk. Thank you for listening.
Oh my goodness. This has been one of the cooler stories. I'm so glad I got to host tonight. nothing against the other presenters of 2022 at all, but this is really cool to see a story come out. Literally flew across the country on a whim, and your current boss at the time said, "Let's go for it," and then you got stuck there for a few years or a few months.
Exactly.
And that's insane. Oh my. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm open to questions.
Yeah. Questions. Chat. I'm scanning YouTube and our Discord here for questions. But yes, please hit us with questions. I know one of the more funny questions I've been seeing in chat is that you've been interacting with a lot of things that interact with or that are called Mac, and I enjoy that.
It's
coincidence or
it's at UMD, right? My teacher was all like, "Oh, because she's like, I'm also kind of reluctant because I'm just like, this sounds like a lot more work." And she's like, "Oh, but we could name it after you." I was like, "No, you don't need to name it after me." But she did, and I was like, "Okay, I guess it's my baby now."
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a coincidence. It just so happened to be like, oh, Bruce, why don't we just call it MAC? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It worked out well, and but like that was the cool thing about it. I was just like, oh, okay, I like it now. I think it's still around. I think Charles McGregor was also a part of that group. But yeah, it's nice to know that there is because we missed each other. So I graduated in 2013. And I believe he graduated maybe in 2014, 15. I'm not sure if he's on here, but he can give you more accurate stuff. But yeah, apparently he was a part of the group along with a few other developers.
Holy cow! It is a small world here. Like a lot of people tend to know each other in the same game dev community, so it's really impressive. I had no idea of the journey that's possible because I know that myself. I've always wanted to go to Japan too, but I doubt that I would have the same amount of luck and or push to create your own business. Oh my gosh, that's how did that even actually? A question from my own personal thought.
Yes.
How did you go about the process of just like running that bar for 6 hours on such a frequent basis?
Yeah, so I called sorry, it's called so there's like Borderless Merrymakers and then there's like different events. So there would be like host bars where I would go to other people's bars, and then there would be my bar which I would host at certain times. So it wasn't like 24/7 because I was still in school, right? Stay in school, guys.
Yeah. But like, did you have to have a business license, or was it just like all cash, and so you handled it that way? Did you have to report earnings or things like that? Like, what were, just out of curiosity?
Yeah. It's so those are all great questions. And so the owner, he would just rent it out to people. So I would just pay him cash, and because he had all the legal stuff set up, and I would just pay him cash to rent it out. And then for reporting, and then don't quote me on. Oh, don't. You didn't hear it from me, but
Sure.
typically, unless you are making more than like 1K in earnings, the government doesn't really care.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Cool to know. That's super cool. Oh gosh. Okay, we're getting some actual questions, such as, do you main Little Mac in Smash Brothers?
I used to, but then I also really like Link as well.
Okay, big fan of Young Link myself as well. Other real questions. What kind of computer do you use if you're deving and such?
Yeah, so initially I was just using like an HP laptop, and because a lot of it was just for writing or outlining things. But then it got to the point where I was like, I need to it's slow because like people would like send me environments, and the environments would just take forever to render. So I upgraded recently, and I'm just doing a HP Victus, and then there was a sale for Cyber Monday. So that's what I'm using now.
Nice.
It's really fast, and I have zero complaints, and I am very happy.
That's very nice. Fantastic. Question from Mr. Axion. Do you still struggle with Japanese?
Yes. I struggle all the time because it's so
It's another
there
language, yeah.
yeah, it's another language, right? And I really have to maintain. So I usually try to practice my Japanese every day, and but it's just reinforcing what I already know. Like for example, like when I'm talking to so there's several different types of Japanese, and so there is, for example, when I'm talking to different age ranges. If I'm talking to kids, they will say some stuff, and I'll just be like, I don't understand what you mean, but I can guess what you mean. But then I'm like, okay, maybe I just don't understand it because I'm a foreigner. And then I would ask like a native Japanese person. They were like, oh, wakaranai. I don't know. They're like, what? I was like, okay, but I guess, but I guess in life, people don't really understand kids very much. If it's middle-aged people, it's not so like teenagers are really hard for me to understand as well, just because of all the slang. Middle-aged people, that's okay. That's that typically they'll use very standard Japanese, and then the old people will just like mumble all their Japanese words. I'm just like, huh? And they're so it depends, and then there is casual Japanese, there is like standard Japanese, and then there is business Japanese.
Mm.
And then with business Japanese, there's a whole new set of phrases and Japanese characters. So it like depending on the area, I can do very well. Even if there are words or things I don't specifically know, I understand the context enough to keep the conversation going. And that's what's most important when it comes to language learning. You don't need to understand everything that people are saying.
Just have to understand enough. That makes sense.
Yes.
I actually can't imagine like hearing the version of like Japanese yeet, or like honestly like whatever the lingo is used today, but in Japanese. That sounds crazy.
I can teach you
Okay,
that. Zaman Miro.
Zaman Mido.
Yeah.
That
That's
sounds
like
cool.
that's like when use that when you've one up somebody, or you like yeeted them basically, where it's just like
Oh, okay. It's like a big cat. Okay.
you're like,
All right.
oh, see that?
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. other last, I'm seeing a few more questions coming in, but I think what we'll do is we'll ask one more question and we'll move on the discussion to the lounge afterwards. But what are your game jam tips for everyone?
Oh yeah, that's really good. So what I've experienced is that it can be either utter chaos or it can be very controlled chaos. And you always want controlled chaos, at least if you want a good product. So one thing that I really like is that if you have business people or business oriented people who are like to organize things, get a producer. Get a producer who is good at organizing tasks, keeping track of things, and making sure that your cats are all herded in a general area, right?
I'd agree. I would say not many people. I mean, like there's a discussion about what is it? God of War Game of the Year, so back so forth. They're like, no one looks at a game and says that this is a well-produced game. But it takes a good producer to make a game that wins Game of the Year. So
Yeah, very true.
I like this advice. Okay, all right. Well, that's it for our presentation today. If you wish to have more, ask more questions, why don't you go ahead and join us in the lounge after on the Discord. Thank you again so much, Mac. It's been an absolute pleasure. This has been a really fun meeting to listen in on your entire adventure, and I look forward to hearing. Keep us posted on the game you're working on. I want to see more about that for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you guys in the lounge.